You already know the government takes a cut of your paycheck. Income tax, payroll tax, sales tax, property tax. You see the deductions, you file the returns, you pay what's owed. But there's another tax you never voted for, never agreed to, and most people never even notice until it's too late. It's called inflation, and it's the most profitable scam governments have ever run, because they get to tax you twice, once when they take your money, and again when they destroy its value. The genius of it is that most people blame everyone except the ones actually doing it. Here's how the con works. When a government spends more than it collects, it has two choices. It can raise taxes directly, which is politically dangerous because people notice and complain. Or it can create new money, which is politically safe because most people don't connect the dots until years later. And when new money floods into the system, prices rise. That's not an accident. That's policy. And every time prices rise, the value of the money you already earned, already saved, already paid taxes on, shrinks. You've been taxed twice, once when they took a percentage of your income, and again when they inflated away the value of what you kept. The trick is as old as currency itself, but most people still don't see it. Let's walk through the pattern, because once you understand it, you'll never look at inflation the same way again. Start with Rome. By the 3rd century after Christ, emperors were facing the same problem every government faces. Too many expenses, not enough revenue. Wars on multiple borders, crumbling infrastructure, a bloated bureaucracy. Tax collection was brutal and inefficient. Raising taxes further would spark rebellion. So they found a quieter solution. Debase the currency. Take the silver denarius and mix in cheaper metals. The coin looks the same, weighs almost the same, but contains less actual silver. Mint more of them. Pay the soldiers, pay the bureaucrats, fund the wars. At first, no one notices. Then merchants start weighing the coins. Then they start refusing debased ones or demanding more of them for the same goods. Prices rise. Not because goods became scarce, but because the money became less valuable. A Roman citizen who paid their taxes in good silver, who saved good silver for retirement, suddenly finds their savings by half as much. They've been taxed again, silently, through debasement. The government wages, which were often fixed by law or custom, stayed the same. The result, workers got poorer, savers got poorer, and the crown got richer. It was taxation without legislation, extraction without accountability. Fast forward to revolutionary France. The assignats we talked about earlier weren't just a currency experiment. They were a massive hidden tax. The government issued paper money to fund wars and maintain order. As they printed more, prices soared. A French citizen who earned 100 livres and paid 20 in taxes had 80 left. But when inflation drove prices up tenfold, those 80 livres bought what 8 used to buy. The government had effectively taken another 72 livres without ever passing a tax law. The citizen paid once at the tax office and again at the market. The Weimar Republic perfected the scam. By 1923, Germany was printing marks so fast that prices doubled every few days. Workers demanded raises constantly, but wages could never keep up with prices. A worker who earned 1,000 marks a week and paid 200 in taxes had 800 left. But by the time they spent it, those 800 marks bought what 400 bought the week before, then 200, then 100. Inflation was eating their paycheck faster than they could spend it. They'd paid income tax at the start of the week. Inflation taxed them again by the end of it. Here's the part most people miss. This wasn't a side effect. It was the point. Governments in crisis don't just stumble into inflation. They choose it. Because inflation reduces the real value of government debt. If you owe 100 million marks and inflation makes marks worthless, your debt becomes trivial. You've transferred the burden from the government to everyone holding marks. It's a wealth transfer, dressed up as monetary policy. The United States learned this trick thoroughly. In 1971, when Richard Nixon severed the dollar's link to gold, he removed the final restraint on money creation. No longer did the government need gold reserves to back its currency. It could simply create dollars as needed, and it did. During the 1970s, inflation soared, prices doubled, savings accounts lost half their purchasing power. Workers demanded higher wages, and when they got them, they were pushed into higher tax brackets, a phenomenon called bracket creep. so they paid more in taxes on wage. But the cost came in the form of rising living expenses, rent, healthcare, education. Wages stagnated while costs climbed, so the worker paid income tax, payroll tax, all the visible taxes. Then they paid again as the purchasing power of their paycheck eroded. Housing that was affordable in 2000 became unaffordable by 2020, not because houses got better, but because money got cheaper and more of it chased the same assets. The government created the money, directed it into the financial system, inflated asset prices, and the bottom half of earners paid the price in diminished purchasing power, taxed twice, once visibly, once invisibly. Here's why this matters now more than ever. Since 2020, governments around the world have printed money at unprecedented levels. Pandemic relief, stimulus checks, corporate bailouts, infrastructure spending, all funded not by taxation, but by money creation. The U.S. federal deficit exploded. The money supply expanded faster than at any point since World War II, and predictably, inflation followed. By 2022, inflation in the United States hit levels not seen in 4 decades. Groceries, gas, rent, all surging. The government and media blamed supply chains, blamed corporate greed, blamed Putin, blamed everything except the trillions of newly created dollars flooding the economy. And while prices rose, wages lagged. Workers saw their paychecks buy less. Retirees on fixed incomes watched their savings shrink. Anyone holding cash got poorer in real terms. But here's the kicker. While inflation eroded purchasing power, tax brackets barely adjusted. So workers whose wages rose nominally to keep up with inflation found themselves pushed into higher tax brackets, paying a larger percentage in income tax, even though their real purchasing power hadn't increased. This is the double tax, perfected. The government inflates the currency, which raises your nominal income, then taxes you more on that inflated income, even though you're not actually richer. You pay once in income tax, and again in lost purchasing power. And most people never connect the two. The mechanism is brilliant in its cruelty. Visible taxes create outrage. Politicians lose elections over tax hikes. But inflation is diffuse, delayed, and easy to blame on external factors. By the time people realize their savings and wages have been hollowed, the working class, which holds most of its wealth in cash and future wages, loses. The wealthy, who hold assets, gain. And the government, which owes debt in its own currency, wins, because that debt becomes cheaper to repay. So the double taxation is also a triple transfer, from savers to debtors, from workers to asset owners, and from everyone to the government. It's the most efficient extraction system ever designed, because it operates automatically, invisibly, and continuously. Let's make it concrete. Imagine you earn $50,000 a year. The government takes $10,000 in taxes. You have $40,000 left. You save $10,000 and spend $30,000. Over the next decade, inflation averages 5% a year. That $10,000 you saved is now worth about $6,000 in real terms. You've lost $4,000 in purchasing power. That's $4,000 the government effectively taxed you without ever sending a bill. And the $30,000 you spent each year? It buys less every year, so you're effectively getting poorer, even if your nominal salary stays the same. You paid once at tax time. Inflation taxed you every single day after. Now scale that across an entire population. Millions of people, losing a little bit of purchasing power every year, while the government and those closest to the money spigot, the banks, the financial sector, benefit. It's not theft in the legal sense, it's policy, but the result is identical. Value flows upward, and the masses don't realize it's happening until it's too late. The countries that have run this scam most aggressively are the ones with the worst inflation. Argentina, Turkey, Venezuela, Zimbabwe, all have governments that spent far beyond their means, printed money to cover the gap, and watched inflation destroy their middle classes. In Argentina, inflation has been a fact of life for so long that people convert pesos to dollars immediately because they know the peso will lose value overnight. The government taxes them once through income tax and again through currency destruction. It's been happening for so long that Argentinians have learned to protect themselves, but that doesn't stop the government from running the same con every single year. So what's the lesson here? First, Understand that inflation is not a natural disaster, it's a policy choice. When central banks create money, when governments run deficits funded by newly printed, the poor have wages and savings that lose value. Third, protect yourself by holding assets that cannot be inflated away. Real estate, commodities, skills, businesses. Anything that holds value independent of currency. Because if you hold only cash and rely only on wages, you are exposed to the double tax every single day. The government will take its cut through income tax, and inflation will take another cut from what's left. Fourth, demand accountability. When politicians promise spending without raising taxes, ask how they'll pay for it. If the answer is borrowing or money creation, understand that you're the one who will pay through inflation. The bill always comes due, just not in the form most people expect. And finally, never assume the system is working in your favor just because it says it is. The double tax exists because it benefits governments and elites while remaining invisible to most people. The moment you see it, you can start protecting yourself. But if you never see it, you'll spend your life working harder for money that buys less, wondering why you can never get ahead. Governments have been running this con for 2,000 years. From Roman emperors debasing coins to modern central banks printing trillions, the script never changes. They tax you once when they take your money. They tax you again when they destroy its value. And they count on you never noticing the connection. The question is not whether they'll keep doing it. They will. The question is whether you'll keep letting them get away with it, or whether you'll learn the rules of the game and play accordingly. If you found this eye-opening, subscribe. The system doesn't want you to understand this, but the past makes it impossible to ignore.